Hello, it's Donna here from Blind and Knitting. I hope you're all well. Welcome back and welcome to new viewers and welcome to existing viewers. It's been a gloomy old winter day here in New Zealand. I am a podcaster. This is episode 37 and it's 20th of July today, and I am legally blind, so I have a little amount of vision here, so knitting's a wee bit of a challenge for me, but it's a passion of mine, so I do love doing it. I live in the lower half of the North Island in New Zealand, a beautiful place, a beautiful part of the country, and I live on a farm block with my partner who's a farmer. And we have a stud, a Texel stud, which is a sheep breed. Texel's an unusual breed that you don't hear a lot about, but that's what we do. I have a guide dog, Kenzie, who is sound asleep just down beside me, and she will hopefully behave herself. She usually does. So, yeah, it's been a little while. I unfortunately got that nasty flu, and as soon as I was starting to feel like I wanted to knit, winter was sort of creeping in, and I remember in my last podcast I mentioned that I was kind of ready to start knitting and get into it. I got the flu really bad. 3 days in bed, 6 weeks total. I've still got a little bit of a rattle, if you can notice. Yeah, Stuart and I both got it together. So he got it on the 30th of June and I got it on the 4th of July. American celebrations there. But yeah, we both spent 3 days in bed, and it's taken a while to recover. And to be honest, I haven't really felt like knitting much. But I have done a bit. So I have no FO at all, but I do have some WIPs that I'm pottering along on that I can show you. But I also thought, I did talk a little bit last time about my pantry and my things that I like to do within cooking, like cooking by scratch and dump and go bags and things like that. And I thought I had a weekend last weekend with 4 of my girlfriends who are like-minded like me. They like to cook naturally, have food from scratch. They don't like the preservatives and things like that. So we had the luxury of, one of them has a house cow, so we all got together last weekend and we made cheese, and we were talking about it and saying not only is it providing food for the family, but it's a hobby. It's I thoroughly enjoy it as a hobby as well. My partner doesn't eat cheese, so I'm the only one that eats cheese, so it will get given away. It does get given away. I give it back to the lady that gives me the milk, and I thought I'd show you. I thought I'd give you a pantry tour. I think I offered last time, so I'll talk about my WIPs. I'll talk about my knitting. I'll talk about our wonderful Wairirapa knitting retreat that we had here locally recently. And yeah, that'll be the podcast. So hopefully you'll enjoy. So sit back, relax. I hope you've got something to drink and you're knitting with you. I'm drinking green tea on the healthy stuff. I do like a green tea, a lemon one. So yeah, I'm enjoying that today. And I'm on my own. Stuart's gone to rugby, so I've got the house to myself. So when I show you my pantry, I might show you what I've been doing in my kitchen as well, because the minute he goes, because I think he's dairy intolerant and gluten intolerant, but he says, excuse my language, he says, I just can't stand the shit, it's a typical old farmer that just sort of says, I don't like that rubbish, but actually it gives him tummy ache, makes him feel ill. He doesn't even like the smell of things like cheese. So the minute he's out the door, it's like, right, get everything out on the pantry, on the bench, and start making all these fun things that I love to do when he's not there sort of looking over my shoulder, what are you doing? Ooh, yuck. It's really a bit demoralising when you really enjoying doing something and someone's in the background going, yuck. Ugh, ugh. So yeah, I've got a night to myself, Kenzie and I, and I'm just going to put my feet up and watch some podcasts, which I've been doing. I potted around in the veggie garden this morning. It's pouring with rain, and I just went out in the rain. I mean, I'm not going to dissolve. I had fun. I potted around, cleaned a few beds up, preparing for winter again. That's a wee bit late because I just didn't have the energy. This is the first weekend that I've actually felt like I've got a bit of energy. So I potted around in the garden. I fed the chooks. I had to feed the dogs for Stuart. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dogs, not including Kenzie, 5 farm dogs, working dogs. So I had to go down and feed them and tuck them all up so nice and warm for the evening. It's not actually evening. I think it's about 4. Well, it's 20 to 5. And I fed the chooks and got them all cuddled up in their beds, and 6 eggs today. So really happy about that. So even in the middle of winter, they're such good layers. I've got High Lines. I don't know if any of you have chooks, but High Lines, great breed, and they do prolifically lay. I've got 4 new chicks. Well, they've grown so much now that I almost can't tell them are different from my old chicks. So they've really shot up and they look really healthy, and I'm imagining in spring they will start popping. So I've got 10 chooks altogether. I'll take you out for a visit one day, but not today. It's miserable. You won't want to go out there. You won't want to go out near my garden either. But in my garden I pulled out 2 cabbages, which we're going to have a family dinner tomorrow night. So got those out. I found some parsnips. I'll show you one of my parsnips that I pulled out. It took me about 5 minutes to get it out. It was like pulling it, you know, like push it this way and then push it that way and push it this way and push it that way to try and get it out. I wasn't sure if I had the hand strength. I finally got it out, but I'll show it to you. We'll go for a little walk after I've talked about my knitting and have a pantry tour, and then I can show you what my projects I'm doing, or my bits I'm doing while Stuart's not here. Yeah, so back to knitting. We had a wonderful retreat. Our knitting group, Wai-knit, W-A-I, as in short for Wairarapa, which is the region we live in, Wai-knit. And we put together last year very quickly a retreat for a sort of a tester, kind of the toe in the water, just to see how things would go, and it works really well. So we decided to have a proper big one this time, and we had 47 people enroll. So it was just wonderful. We spent Friday night having nibbles and wines and just chatting and getting to know each other, and we had some stalls there. So we had a Stitch In, which is Carol and her husband Andrew have a new shop in town, and they're a fabric and fibre shop, so they came and set up a stall. We had Good Wool Hunting, which I've mentioned before. I have brought quite a bit of wool from them. They're a lovely couple that brought their products and had a stall. We had Rosemary from the Spud. I've forgotten what her full name of her business is. She dyes with natural dyes, fantastic fibres, you know, like madden and walnuts and avocado pips and things like that, stones. It's just really, really good. And who else was there? Was that it? Seems like such a long time ago now. Yeah, I think that, no, there was one more, but when it comes to me, I'll let you know. But anyway, we had a wonderful time the Friday night, just nibbling on cheese and crackers and wine and getting to know each other. We had quite a few people come from different parts of the country, so it was really nice. And then Saturday we had James Herbison, who has a wool shop in Greytown, which is just half an hour or so from us. He's opened it. He did have a wool shop before, shut it, and now he's reopened one. And his interest is around different types of fibre, so it's, you know, quite interesting. He came and spoke to us about his trip to Scotland, and he did a tour around the Isles and knitting, and specifically around knitting within the Isles in Scotland. I have talked about his talk before because he spoke at Dunedin when we went down to unwind their knitting retreat down in Dunedin, and it was so good that we asked him to come and speak at ours, and he was fabulous. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Then we had some workshops. We had Rosemary, one of our ladies from Wai-knit, did her dyeing with natural fibres, and another lady, Christine, from our knitting group, did a sock knitting workshop, and so people could choose those. We were going to have another one, but unfortunately the lady took ill, so we only had 2 instead of 3. But people shuffled around and understood that, you know, particularly in the winter, these things happen. But it was fabulous. or you could just sit in the hall. We had it at one of our local schools, and so we sat in the school hall and just knitted and chatted, which is what I prefer to do. I felt like, I was on tea duty really. I kind of made the cups of teas and kept the kitchen rolling, and so I just stayed in the hall and thoroughly enjoyed myself chatting away. It was all very relaxed. And then on Sunday, we had a bus come and take everybody out to Stuart and I's. It's actually the woolshed on the neighbour's farm, but to Stuart and I's sheep were being shorn on not a full shear. They were doing crutches and bellies, which is in preparatory. They were ewes that were pregnant, so they get crutched and bellied already for pregnancy and birth. And so they were getting those done by a lovely guy, Alan Grant, who's our shearer. And Alan's a fascinating guy who has shorn in Golden Shears, which is a big international shearing competition in New Zealand, in Masterton, that we have here. And Stuart talked about our Texel breed of sheep and farming per se. So we all sat round. It was quite cold in the wool shed, but thankfully we're all knitters and had lots of woolies on. And sat round in the wool shed and got a presentation by Stuart and Alan, and then Alan shore the sheep, which was wonderful. And then Stuart and I have a pet sheep, and I think I've talked about him before. His name's 122, and everyone around the neighbourhood and family knows 122. He's been with us for nearly 12 years. He's a great big huge old wether, which means a male sheep that is just juicy, can't produce anymore, and so he's been neutered. And he lives out in our property and comes and gets carrots every day and apples. He loves carrots and apples, and so we took him over, and Alan shore him with hand shears, which I mean I've seen hand shears before, but I've actually, well, I can't remember, because I'm sure my father will have done it when I was a child, and I spent enough time in the sheds. I'm sure I've seen it as a little one, but I couldn't actually remember it. So it was quite interesting watching Alan shear 122 with hand shears, which was fascinating. So and then we had lunch and a good old natter and a knit, and then the bus took them home and they went off to their own homes. So it was just lovely. And if you did come and you're watching, it was so nice to meet you all. I hope you really enjoyed your time with us at our retreat, and keep your we'll keep you informed if and or when we have another one. It was wonderful. And our team, our lovely ladies in our knitting group, really worked hard to get it to be quite a success. So quite proud of our knitting group, who, as I say, worked quite hard. So that's what else has been happening. Last time we spoke, I said that I had officiated my granddaughter's wedding. She got married back in February, and I'm going to be a great grandma. So they're expecting. Yes, so she decided to get pregnant straight away from the wedding, and I don't think she thought she'd fall in quite so quickly, but she did. And so I've got 7 grandchildren, which I just simply adore. Love being a nana, but I'm going to be a great grandma. Oh, what's with that? I do feel a bit young, but it does mean that we'll have 4 generations, which is kind of special. We had 4 generations when my mum was alive, but now we'll have 4 generations, the next generation down. So she's due in November, late November. So, but before that, I have 2 nieces that are both expecting as well. So I've got one due very soon. Actually, she, I think she ended up in hospital a couple of days ago with warning bells, but she's gone back home. She's not due till 16th of August. So she's will be the first one, and then my other niece, though they're sisters. Isn't it nice that those kids will all grow up together? She is due in September, and then of course Zoe's due in November. So Christmas Day, and my son-in-law's son, my step-grandson, his partner and himself are expecting as well, and I think they're due about now. So that'll be 4 new babies at Christmas. Oh, Trudy and I will be in heaven with all these new babies to play with. We'll just sit there with one under each arm and be happy as. Yeah, it'll expand our family, which is already large. I mean, my kids feel like my sister is their mother as well, and I feel like I'm a mother to Trudy's girls. So they they feel like brothers, and they feel like sisters. It's just all the girls in New Zealand. My son lives in Australia. He's the only boy in the family. Trudy had 4 girls, and I had a boy and a girl, and then we had Zoe. So Troy was the only boy in the group. So yeah, I know that Shannon's having a boy. I don't know what Zoe's having. She's going to keep that as a surprise. And Courtney's having a girl. So we've definitely got one of each coming. So we'll see what Zoe's is as well. All very exciting. And I'm not much for knitting baby clothes because I just don't. Well, I just don't. I did with my kids. I must tell you a lovely story though. Excuse me, I'll just have a drink. I've been taking a parenting course with a couple. That's what I do in my day job. I'm a social worker, and I have a business where we support vulnerable families. And this couple, they're fairly tough cookies, and I think I can say this on here because they're probably not likely to see it, and I'm not going to say their names. Fairly tough cookies. And I said to them, what would you like to do for one of these sessions? And they both started talking about how arty they were. And the mum said, you know, I would really love to learn to crochet so I could crochet my baby a blanket. And I said, well, I can do that. So let's put that in for next week. And then Zoe, who helps me out at work, she works for me, so she was helping me on the day. She said, oh, I'd love to learn to crochet too so I can crochet a blanket for my baby. So I went and brought 2 crocheting hooks, one for each of them. And I took my crocheting hook and some wool the next week, and I was teaching them to crochet. And the dad, we had another activity for him to do, which was they're like lava lamps. So you make them out of little Coke bottles and put coloured water in them and glitter and oil, and you move them up and down like that, and they glob and gloop. But children love them. So we got him making one of those for his child as well. So he had something to do. And he came over and he said, don't tell anybody. This is a deep secret. And I thought, oh, what on earth are you going to say? But will you teach me how to crochet? So I taught him how to crochet too. So they both went off quite happy. I haven't seen them. I see them next week, so I'll see how they go. But yeah, it was just lovely. And he said, oh, I'm just really embarrassed. And I said, look, my dad knit. My dad taught me to knit. And I said, historically, knitting was very male orientated. Men, the Scottish Highlanders would knit after battle around the fires, and the clicking of, they would use like steel needles, and the clicking of the needles would settle them. And of course they needed wool to keep warm. And then fishermen was the other, knitting for fishermen was another way that knitting and crafts came about. And I said, my dad was a, big, burly farming man, and he knit his own hats and made his own moccasins, and, and so I think he felt a little better. And I said, I didn't link any podcasts to him, but I linked some podcasts for both Zoe and the other mum to watch. But it was kind of a special moment for me. I must admit, I just really loved it. And I bought the 2 crocheting hooks for Zoe and the mum to keep. And in the end, I had to give, well, I didn't have to, but I wanted to. I gave him my crocheting hook to keep as well. So, because I thought, well, I can't give them 2. So I had to go and buy myself a new, I couldn't buy just one. So I bought myself a new set of crocheting hooks. I only gave him one, but the set. I can't even remember how much they were. But yeah, so I quite like the handle on those. They're like a silicone grip, and they're a nice shape. So we'll see how they go. I thought I might get into, I've just got so much wool about, put that down there, so much wool about that, yeah, or odd skeins that I'd quite like to make a patchwork blanket myself. And Carol, who's a friend of mine and a counsellor, has opened as the Stitch Inn, it's called, in Masterton, and she's taking workshops, and she makes the most stunning patchwork. They're granny squares, but they're octagonal, and they're done, they look like that it's a patchwork quilt, crocheted blanket, but it looks like a patchwork quilt, and it's just beautiful, and she's going to teach me how to make it. So she's got classes going on at in her shop, and so if you're interested in that and you're in the local area of the Wairarapa, she's in Kurupuni, and the shop's called The Stitch Inn, and she's teaching patchwork and crocheting, patchwork, etc. classes, and sewing, and all sorts of other classes as well. She's got lots of classes going on. I didn't get paid to say that, but yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. But also there's a really cool cardigan, a granny square cardigan, and crocheting's becoming a little bit sort of popular again. It was quite kitsch for a long time, and it still is to a degree, but I like a granny square. I think they're quite pretty. And there's this cardigan called the Jethro, Jethro. I can't remember the designer, but if you Google Jethro, it's really lovely. It's granny squares, and it has knitted bands and knitted sleeves, and it's just lovely. So I've kind of got that on my to-do list if I get my mojo back for knitting. Hopefully I will. Oh, that green tea's lovely. So where am I at with my knitting? Well, the one that I was working on, the first one I was working on that I talked about was my Pure Joy shawl by Hohi Locatelli. I'm still pottering away on that. It's in my office at work, so I can't show you, unfortunately. But I'm pottering along. Every now and then I'll pull it out and do a few rows. It's at work, so I do it there. But the one that I have achieved quite a bit with is my Corin cardigan by Creya Bayer. So I've done that. I've got a bit of a sleeve going on. I'm going to do long sleeves. So yeah, so one sleeve up, it's 3 needled bind off at the top. So I've just got 2 sleeves to do and the bands, and I've finished. It's quite pretty, and I've shown this before. It's a really pretty, simple, easy to remember lace pattern, and I'm doing it in a fibre called roving, which is it doesn't have a ply. It's a blown fibre, 8 ply. So it does go quickly when I pick it up. And yeah, seeing it now kind of has given me the mojo. That's a really pretty lace, if you can see that. So I must get on with that. I don't want to masturbate, but I would like to get on with that. Yeah, 1.5 sleeves and a bands. Come on. I've got in August 22nd, I think, is Knit August Nights, which is Skeins fibre shop in Napier, and they have an annual retreat, and we go to that. So some of us from Wyknit will be going to that, and I'm one of them, and so it would be quite nice to have this done to wear there. So Donna, get on with it, woman. The next one is a pair of socks that I've been pottering with. I'm not going to be able to tell you the fibres that I'm knitting with because it's been such a long time I can't remember, but that's what the fibre looks like for my socks. I bought that at Goodwool Hunting in Greytown, and that's what it's coming out like. Oh, hang on. Quite cool colours together, really. Yeah, so I'm just pottering along with those. I had lost my mojo for socks, and it's just nice to pick them up every now and then and do a few rounds. So I'm not stressing. I've got heaps of socks, but yeah, pottering with those. I have done a cast on though. So this is a new WIP. This wool here is, again, I can't remember. I bought it a long time ago. I think I bought it a couple of 2 or 3 years ago from at Cairn at Knit August Nights Skeins Napier Retreat. It's definitely a merino silk, because I can tell that, and it's a 4-ply, and it's a lovely colour. So it's coming up at quite orange with you, but it's almost a peachy pinky orange. It's really pretty. Yeah, it's not going to show up great, but I am knitting a short-sleeved 4-ply top called, I wrote it down, called, I did write it down, here we go, First Impressions Blouse by Iona Ryson. And it's really pretty. It's just a simple crew neck, short-sleeved, raglan, top down, and it's a plain with sort of 1-inch panels, stripes of lace. So once I'm up to the lace now, you can see that I've done a little bit of doodahs on the ribs to give it a bit of extra. I've done the short rows at the back, and so now I'm up to doing a lace panel. So it's really pretty. So I'm quite looking forward to carrying on and pottering with that. So that's my latest cast on. That was really to try and get my mojo back, I think, was to start that. So I've got one sock, my shawl, my First Impressions blouse, and my current cardigan are sort of the main ones going on. I'm not going to buy any fibre because I've got so much. I've got some of Lisa's from Unwind and Knit in Christchurch. I brought some of her Knit by Numbers 8-ply, and I want to knit a striped top jersey with that. Short sleeve crew neck. I think similar to that. I'm kind of finding out my mojo, really. I do like V-necks, but I quite like a short sleeve, and I love a raglan. So yeah, that's kind of what I've gone to do. So I've got that ready to knit, and I brought some hedgehog fibres from Ethan, and I couldn't remember Ethan's shop name last podcast, but it's Get Flocked, and that's in Christchurch. So I bought some hedgehog fibres, and that's really sort of pink, pale pastel pinks and blues and that, and I want to knit a cardigan with that, so a summer spring cardigan with that. And so those are my sort of ones that I'm going to follow up with after these, I hope, because I often swap around. You know, that's what is it that life happens? No, plans. Life happens while we're making plans. Well, that's, yeah. So I have done some knitting. I am pottering along. I haven't stopped completely, apart from when I was crook. But it's not at the pace that I was previously. And I'm sure I'll get back to that. I'm kind of feeling a bit excited about them. And I just need to get back in. It's more the habit. Habit's quite a hard one to get back into once you break a habit. You've got to kind of get back into it. I know they say that it's 21 days to make a habit. Actually, that is a fallacy. That came originally from it takes 21 days to form a scab on a sore. So I don't really understand, but that's how that started coming. It's a bit longer than 21 days to form a habit. I don't know. So when we create a habit, so for example, knitting or learning to drive or something like that, we have all of the neurons. We're born with 100 billion neurons. We die with 100 billion neurons in our brain. We've killed a few along the way, but not too many. The difference between the newborn brain and the older person's brain is the connections between. So when we do something like learn a new skill, we make these connections. So say, for example, there's 5 neurons there and we are learning to drive. So it's put your clutch in, put your gear in, lift your clutch, away you go. And so you start building and you create this connection between these neurons. As you do it more and more, that connection gets stronger and stronger. And eventually what happens is it's called myelination. The connection gets myelinated with like a plastic coating really on like a hose coating, and it goes around and it makes the connections really strong and super fast. So they just go and they're so fast. So that's, you know, how when we finish learning to drive and all of a sudden we've driven home and we think, gosh, I didn't even have to think about how I drove. It just happened. And so that's the same with, you know, when you do something like knitting. If you put it down, sometimes what happens is you go back to the old connections. So if you learn a different way, and sometimes you can drop back into the old connections, which is what's happened. And I need to get back into my new ones and get those connections strong again. And that's, yeah. So if you are learning something new, that just remember that you've got to do it repetitive until you can get that myelinated sheath around it and then it'll happen. What tends to happen though is if we've got something that we but learn one way and then we want to learn it a different way, we can do that, and you start creating another motorway, so to speak, and that becomes myelinated. But the problem being is when we are stressed, our brain automatically goes back to the easiest route, which is the first way we learned. And that's why sometimes we go back to old habits very quickly. You know, they never go away. They kind of sit there with tumbleweed and going down these motorways. So they just sit there while we're using our new ones. But when we're stressed, we will jump back to those, and then we've got to get back to the new ones. You know, that's why learning something for a while and then getting this habit and get round and round and round so it becomes myelinated is a good idea. I hope that made sense, but that's how we learn, basically. And so if we learn something that's not great and we want to change it, be kind on yourself if you jump back into it. It's a bit like, and we all do it, we all go, oh, it just sounded just like my mother. Or, you know, mum used to do that with me, or dad used to do that with me when I was a kid, and I've really tried hard not to do that, but then you just drop back into it. So that's knitting. That's just, and there's your psychological little gem for the day. Is when you want to learn something new, do it very slowly and make sure those connections, and try really hard to keep those connections going until they're myelinated, and that's how you keep that connection going, including knitting. So let's hope that Zoe and the other couple that I talked to crochet last week have started myelinating these connections to learn to crochet. Let's go and have a look at my pantry, eh? I hope I don't lose you, but I'm going to push pause, and then I'm going to take you to my pantry and have a little nosy around. Let's pause.